And I'm going to read the question. Welcome to Geopolitics in Conflict Live. All right, guys. Good to see you. The week goes by so fast.
And so much has happened.
Exactly. So, well, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever part of the world you're in. So we are so excited to be here because that's my favorite thing, Ross. Friday. I got up this morning at 5:30, almost 5:45, because I was waiting for the time for this. Was also to think about how we're gonna structure the conversation and so forth. So we are so excited to be here. We hope you are as well, and that's why you're here. So,
and we want to thank you for viewing.
Of course,
we want to thank you for subscribing, and if you've not yet subscribed, please do. We believe our message is important for all human beings, and we want to give you the highest quality possible information for you to make up your own minds about things. We're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to give you good information.
You're absolutely correct, Ross. You're absolutely correct. So just before I forget, remember, guys, to follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, and follow us on TikTok. Yes, we are on TikTok right now.
We are.
I never thought we would, but Elizabeth works that out. So make sure you guys follow us on that. And also, we want to take this opportunity quickly here to mention we're going to be having our Elizabeth. We have our live presentation for our members next week. Yes. And also, I believe Ross and Elizabeth is going to be working on some special presentations regarding NLP, linguistic programming.
How to come out of hypnotic trance that most politicians are expert at doing.
Oh my gosh.
What are they really saying?
Yeah, I will be watching that because that's not my area. So just you and Elizabeth is going to be doing that. So, well, great. So we're going to do, like we always do, guys, we'll do our tour around the world, shall we say, with the headlines. Then we're going to jump into our topic, which is today, it's an interesting topic.
Oh, I couldn't imagine a more important one.
It is indeed.
Let me start with the headlines.
Let's start with that, Ross.
The United States invited 110 countries to participate in the Democracy Summit in D.C.
Exactly. That's scheduled between the 6th and the 9th of December. I think it's going to be virtual, not a face-to-face.
Okay.
But here is the thing, what I found ironic about all this. What are we going for this democratic summit on democracy when we couldn't fix our own democracy here at home? I tweeted on it yesterday, Ross. Then I said, how about if we fix poverty? How about if we fix infrastructure? How about if we fix education, healthcare, tax system that is broken and favors the rich? And how about inflation? That the government keep lying, and yet Americans' families are living, paycheck to paycheck. Things going very bad. What are we doing the Summit for Democracy for?
Show.
And taxpayers' money that's going to pay for that? Let's fix our own democracy first before we tell the world how to be democratic.
Well, that's what our show is actually about.
Exactly.
Information.
Indeed.
Australia building camps in part of its pandemic restrictions targeting Aborigines.
That is very disturbing. Why is disturbing? Is because also, I don't know if you guys are aware or not, what's taking place in Austria right now. It's very scary for me personally. Why? It's because I tend to use history as my guide.
Yeah.
And if you think about what the Nazis did, how it's all started, it's the exact procedures that the Austrian government now
Australian government?
Austria is doing right now.
Oh, Austria's doing.
No. You're right. Australia. But okay. There are two.
Oh, Austria.
There is
Australia
its own. And there is Austria. In Europe, they are doing some restrictions that are beyond what you can even imagine.
And the demonstrations are
in 2021. That's why my concern. So in the Australia case, the building of the camps, which we are now in the process of verifying, there are some unconfirmed report. We don't want to jump the ship till we know for fact. But what Ross was mentioning has to do with the northern states in Australia, because Australia is big. And yes, they are focusing on the Aborigines first, which is very problematic. So in other words, Australian government is not disclosing to the Aussies what's taking place on their own ground. And we're going to do, by the way, guys, we're going to do a full show on that next week as we are waiting for confirmation from some of our sources inside the country.
the Australian government is sending its radioactive waste to Malaysia.
Oh, yeah, that's very disturbing. And I found that out, Ross. Actually, it is a company, the company called, and I have the name of the company right here because I did find it. The Australian mining company called Lynas, Lynas. They are shipping the waste material to Malaysia. So in other words, they are now looking at Malaysia as a dumping ground for the, I mean, to me, it was like shocking that Malaysian government will even allow that.
That is shocking.
Yeah. And I don't know if the Malaysian people know about it or not.
Oh, what's your guess?
Probably not.
They're probably not, right? Russia is sharing intelligence with China. That's not a surprise.
It's not. But what was interesting about this one is it has to do with the Russian satellites picked up some mocking training of the U.S. on nuclear targets. Actually, the Russian accused U.S. of staging a mock nuclear strike with 10 bombers. And what the Russians end up doing is they end up sharing the information with China. What is the significance on this, in my opinion?
Yeah.
That tells you right there that military cooperation between China and Russia is growing because they are realizing together they will be far stronger against the common enemy. So
we now know who's declared themselves to be their adversary.
Exactly.
It's not a surprise.
Exactly, Russ.
Iran's accession to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
Indeed,
this is important.
Indeed. Well, what's important about this? What's important about it, Russ, is that now is official that Iran is a full member. Because remember, you have full members, you have, and I did find some info for you guys, and I'm going to share it with you. That has to do with, for example, you got how it's all started, by the way, just for you guys to know. There were about 6 countries: China, Russia, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan. That's how it's all started. Now you have also what they called the dialogue partners, and that includes Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Cambodia, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Because in big organization like that, not everybody is a full member.
Right.
Full member. Well, Iran, what's the key about this? Why we wanted to just highlight this is that Iran now is going to be a full member, which means what? It has the full access to whatever benefits it's going to have from the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but mainly has to do with also the trade that's going to have between Iran and Russia and Iran and China.
Which we know is substantial.
Yeah, and we all know where this is going. That
Right.
geopolitical shift we always talk about, because now they're going to strengthen their presence in Central Asia. As a matter of fact, they're going to extend all the way to the Middle East.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's what I found very interesting about that.
How much success are the Iraqi factions, and how successful are they in terms of getting U.S. forces out of Iraq?
What it looks like by the end of the year, we're gonna see some of that issue right there, because this reminds me of Afghanistan.
Oh yeah.
So we're gonna be seeing some major dynamics of the U.S. being kicked out of Iraq if they don't leave, because they're supposed to leave by the end of the year. There's factions now, the Iraqi factions, with those militias, very armed and equipped and all that stuff. They made it clear if the U.S. doesn't get out by the end of the year, they're gonna start seeing attacks on the U.S. Yes, that's what they're gonna. So that's why we wanted just to highlight this one here.
The Strategic Oil Reserve, we've now seen some of it.
Oh, great!
Is this a joke or what?
It is a joke. It is why a joke. Most Americans, the rest of the world is a different story, but most Americans have no clue, Ross, that the 50 million barrel, it says 15 million.
Yeah.
That won't even cover 3 days. Because here is the thing. How much do we spend a day? How many barrels of oil we spend a day? It's about 20 million, 19 to be exact. As a matter of fact, Elizabeth tweeted one about this when the Secretary of Energy was asked. She was asked, and I said, "Do you know how many oil barrels we use?" She did not know.
At least she said she didn't know.
Well,
true or false, we don't know. But
yeah, it's embarrassing.
No matter what,
Yeah,
it's either deception or just lack of information.
yeah,
And she's responsible for that kind of information.
exactly. If you are in position of leadership, you're gonna have to be responsible for whatever that is. So, but here is the bottom line for especially the American consumers. I hope if there are Americans watching this, we're not getting 50 million barrels of oil. We're getting only 32 because the 18 million barrel that's been approved by Congress, guess who's paying for it? We are.
Oh,
That's just, and this is where you and Elizabeth is going to be talking down the road about how politicians manipulate the wording. It shows 50 million barrel. Wow,
that's a lot. That's a lot.
But in reality,
the reality is just not much at all.
So it's a form of, as you suggested, deception or lying, whatever term you want. But anyway, we wanted to bring this to you to know 50 million is nothing. So, all right. Let's move on to our topic of the day. But before that, Ross, I would like to, for us in America, yesterday was Thanksgiving.
Right.
I hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
Well, actually, I did.
Good. I did too. I am grateful for so many things. To me, I always think of Thanksgiving. You don't have to wait to Thanksgiving to be thankful. Right. Why don't you be thankful the entire year? Every day you wake up in the morning, be grateful that you're alive, you breathe in. And
a data point psychologically.
Yeah.
If you start your day with gratitude, you live longer.
That's what I do.
That's actually a fact.
Yeah. Besides something else that I do, and I don't mind sharing it with our viewers. It's a personal, but I do the teachings of Shaolin.
Oh,
I don't know. Some might know what Shaolin is, and I get into the. It's very important, but that's what I like. But I am very grateful for the things that I have in life, the gratitude for life, and the liberty that I have. Even though the liberty that I have, it's starting to decrease.
Yes, it's in decline, serious decline.
So makes me wonder, the land of liberty, what happened to that liberty that is getting decreasing one day at a time, slowly?
Well, that takes us perfectly into our topic of the day.
Exactly.
The democratic ideals are on the slide downwards.
Yeah, exactly. But also there's another thing that I want to talk about is the free will. That I am also thankful for that, except now the free will is becoming a little bit more, shall we say, what's the word I'm looking for? Suppressed.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes down to censorship. Where is the free will we have? So I am still thankful, but I am noticing the decline into this kind of one step at a time, as to how they are limiting the liberties and freedoms for what we do and what we say.
And it is substantial.
Yeah.
There's been more decline in democratic values in the last 4 years than in the previous 40 years.
Exactly.
This is a worldwide phenomenon, and it is getting worse almost by the day.
Exactly. And that is what we're going to be covering today. We're going to talk about the decline of democracy. But here is what I found very ironic. All this came from, and as always, guys, I know you know this, but just we wanted to say it to you. We're going to do the 20-minute conversation. Then we'll open up the floor for your questions. Just put, as always, question, and we'll go from there. What I found very interesting about the Swedish report, I know we're going to have a link to this report. It was an 80-page report. I read some of it, not all of it, but I read the beginning to have an idea of what I'm looking at. And it came from Sweden, and the Swedish think tank, rather. And what they're saying, basically, what they are saying, Ross, is that this decline, the West wanted to justify it by blaming authoritarian regimes.
Oh, yeah.
And this has nothing to do with the reality whatsoever. The decline in a democracy is from within.
Right.
And look no further than what we are experiencing right now. I never thought in my wildest dreams that here in the US, we're going to have censorship. I just never thought I would ever experience that.
And yet you and I and Elizabeth, we face it every day.
Yeah, well, look at, that's why we do what we do with the members, because that platform is separate from this. We can, on that platform, we talk. And we're going to do this. As a matter of fact, we're going to do a special presentation for our members regarding this. But we want also to talk to the extent of what we can share with you guys. That is where my big concern with this. So the question becomes is what's leading to this? And as you mentioned earlier, Ross, that it's only the last 4 years things have, even though this research, this study, Ross, has been evaluating or assessing the decline of democracy in the last decade.
Yes.
For a whole decade. It starts to go gradually. And this makes you start to think and wonder, is the democratic system truly is what it says it is?
Well, there are 4 major factors that this group is looking at in terms of, one of them is fair elections. And do you recall the Al Gore
versus Bush in Florida
in the year 2000?
Yeah.
That was very sobering because it came down to one state.
Okay.
And then the news media was actually doing news in those days, which is 21 years ago.
Yeah.
And what they found is that there were whole groups of voters that their votes were not counted, and it was political.
Wow.
And it was more than 100,000.
Wow.
But they couldn't retrieve them. It just went on and on and going, we're that vulnerable? That was then. It's worse now.
No. Yeah.
So fair elections.
Uh-huh.
Protection of basic freedoms is something else they looked at. And, and this is an important one. How much does a particular population hold its government officials accountable? Oh, how much of that do we see?
None.
And then, is the judiciary independent?
It's a joke here.
It's a joke here.
It is.
I mean, we see just atrocious things happening.
Yeah.
And so it's no wonder that we've lost so many points on their scale in just the last few years.
Exactly. Well, if I can comment on 2 of those 4 points you mentioned, the first one is the voting, because most of us do not understand that when it says in the Constitution, 1 man, 1 vote.
Yeah.
1 man, because back then women weren't allowed to vote. But, to me, I will amend and change the Constitution by saying 1 man, 1 woman vote, 1 man, 1 vote.
Yeah.
But the system is not set up that way. Of course, makes you feel that you are voting, but your vote won't matter. It's kind of like a joke. But for the judicial part, it's when you start to see the Supreme Court of the United States getting involved, politically speaking, behind the scenes, you lose faith. I lost faith in the judicial branch altogether because, first of all, what are you sitting in a bench for life? I don't believe in life terms.
Right.
This is to me, one of the errors or big fundamental problem in American system, because why would you want to have lifetime appointments? In a democracy, you're not supposed to have that.
Well, the founding fathers couldn't imagine people would live this long.
Yeah.
Because in the 18th century, people didn't.
Yeah.
But now we've recently seen jurists that were ancient. And out of touch.
Yeah. But at least in Europe, you see in their Supreme Courts, and I did the research this one, find out that Supreme Court judge in Europe, their tenure shouldn't exceed 18 years. That's it.
That's quite long enough.
That's long. To me, I'll do it for 12, and that's it. Same thing with our members of the Congress. What would you be in Congress 4 years? What can you do in 40 that you couldn't do in 10? Limit that to 5 terms for the House of Representatives, because each term is 2 years. 5 terms is plenty. And for the Senate, which is 6-year term, limit it to 2 terms. 12 years is plenty. You don't need that. Makes you wonder why politicians go into Congress and becomes millionaires.
I was just going to say that. We know. Let me not go that direction. I have too much emotion about it, and I want to deliver facts, not emotion.
Exactly. Yeah, but at the same time, we're going to share with our viewers how Nancy Pelosi is going to be buying a $25 million house in Florida.
It's not even going back to California.
Yeah, shame when people are struggling here in America. But anyway, let's go back to our topic as far as what's leading to this decline beside what we are noticing right now. Well, one of the things that the research found, Ross, it has to do with the measures that the governments in the Western world are taking regarding the pandemic. That's what's leading to that.
Yes.
So,
And it's not like all of us don't feel that, because virtually everyone I talk to is upset by what the government is doing about it. Among other things, how come they don't give us a clear understanding? How come everything is so confusing? How come we hear one side then going, come on.
yeah, well, it is confusing by design, because what's going on is, I fear, and this is my personal opinion, I fear that we in the West, I can't speak for the West, I speak for my country where I live.
Right.
I fear the United States is moving into feudalism system, and that is where the rich, here is my big concern with them. I hope if you are an American viewer, you pay attention. It's the idea that you're gonna have, my big concern the next 10 years, Russ, you're gonna have about 8 to 10 companies control everything in American system. You hear about that term of Great Reset. That means Prince Charles can hop on his plane and fly around the world, while a truck driver cannot own a house, shouldn't own a house. He doesn't need to.
He should rent. From the wealthy.
Yeah.
We got it.
That is where my fear is moving this direction, because I am seeing the trend. As an analyst, I look for the trends. And the trends that I'm seeing is even space now is going to be dominated by Bezos and Elon Musk. The two
outrageous wealth.
It is. And the idea, well, not against you being wealthy or whatever, but come on, when you concentrate power in the hand of few, you look at San Francisco right now. Back in the late 70s or early 80s, how the Silicon Valley used to be. As a matter of fact, Silicon Valley today, I just found out this morning, Silicon Valley has 75% of those employees there are not Americans at all. 75%. Yes. That tells you right there where things are. So, but when you have, the likes of Facebook or Meta, that calls itself Meta, with strong lobby and power in Congress and controlling, you can just see where this is where that decline in a democracy. That's why I said, for Thanksgiving, I am still grateful for liberty, but I am very, very concerned as to where it's going. I am still grateful for freedom of speech, but I am growing concerned with this censorship, where it's going. Because what's next? And this is what raised the red flag for me when I saw the demonstrations in Austria as to what the government is doing there.
Well, one of the signs of democracy declining is citizens groups are suppressed. And boy, are we seeing it.
Exactly.
With such things as you're unpatriotic, you're pro this, you're pro that, but you're not pro America. How could, it's so patently wrong, but it is effective in this name calling.
And haven't we heard that so many times on our channel by some putting comments? You got the idea. Somebody putting, well, you guys, this paid channel, whatever. That's a weak argument. To me, anybody who will be talking in this term, he or she is free to say whatever. We're not objecting to that. It just, I will not respond because it's a waste of my time, and to our viewers, because our viewers, their comments are very substantial. I read them word for word personally, because I value their time. They put their time on the book. So when I read something that is really degrading and nonsense, it's not worth my time. So, but that is not where the issue. The issue is for some people to even start to think in terms of, we are free to say whatever, but when you start having the system itself managing now how things are, that becomes very problematic. And we're already witnessing this with the censorship. We all know that's why there are certain words we can't say here, but we do have a different platform for our members where we talk openly, and we're going to talk about this topic big time.
Well, let me bring up a couple of things that I think really apply here.
Sure, Ross.
Because we see it on if we actually watch the news, we'd see it every evening. One of the major contributors to this decline in democratic processes is internal domestic terror attacks, supposedly random. How many times do we see person plows into a peaceful crowd, guns, schools? Just on and on and on. And so the net effect of that is everyone feels this low level of fear.
I think it's a high level now.
Well, it could be high level now with so much that's going on.
Exactly.
And so people feel no security, and they definitely want the security. And then we see all sorts of groups out there saying, yeah, well, this really shows that you need to be afraid. You need to be afraid of this terror group or whatever it is. And it's constant.
Yeah. I have one stats here that I'd like to share would like to share with you. As of August, which is only a few months ago, as of August 21, 64% have taken an action to curb the pandemic that is considered disproportionate, unnecessary, or illegal. And this is exactly why I was disturbed. I was disturbed when I saw what was taking place in Austria. I mean, because it brought me personally, brought my memories back to what took place with the Nazis. Because that's exactly, and I had a chance to go to Poland and go to Auschwitz myself. I went there physically and I saw with my own eyes. I mean, you walking into that, a different, whatever goes through your mind, you kind of put the whole world behind you and just imagine or reimagine what those individuals have to go through.
When I lived in Germany, I went to one of the camps.
Yeah.
It was unimaginably horrible.
Yeah. And what I found very interesting, Russ, I watched a documentary about that time of history. And what one comment sticks with me, I will never forget this. When they were asking a Jewish lady, they were just asking her what she said. Oh, we were thinking in terms, this will pass. It's only this, and it'll blow off. And they start adding one thing till they start to have their numbers on their bodies and the start. Which is exactly what Austrian government is doing. As a matter of fact, Germany right now is deploying military. I just found out this morning. Germany is going to be deploying the military to deal with this so-called pandemic. I mean, where are we going with this? And the thing is, Europeans are fighting back. You see the demonstrations in Italy, France, Germany. Croatia has called its ambassador in Austria to protest. Denmark and the US, we are like, the population is so sleeping. It's like numb. They couldn't even see the reality for what it is. And makes you just wonder, aren't they informed enough? Can they see with their own eyes where things are headed? And it makes you wonder if this couldn't sort of make you broil, whatever. It makes me upset in the sense that, I'm seeing the decline of this so-called democracy. Well, where is democracy when you start censoring people for what they say?
Well, make everyone afraid to take any action.
Yeah.
This kind of polarization leads to inactivity. People are afraid, and if you open your mouth, you are doing a death-defying act.
Yeah. Well, this is exactly what they're doing in Australia also. The government there is embarking on some policies. As we said again, for the issue of the camp, it's not across the board, has not been verified yet. And we are waiting on that info. And we're going to do a show on it by the time we receive that info. Yeah. Except that it is happening in certain pockets of the country. But when you start having countries like, Australia, that's considered self-democracy, which to me, it's kind of like, I got to question that, because it becomes the idea of one thing, by the way, interesting enough, that crossed my mind. One thing now that I am asking myself, and maybe even for you guys, I'll ask this question. How do you guys think, moving forward, the shift in geopolitical systems around the world is going to impact democracy or other systems vis-a-vis their efficiency? In another word, simply said, is are we going to be questioning now the validity and the effectiveness of democracy vis-a-vis other systems that seems to work?
It's already happening.
Exactly. And this is where I read between the lines what the report, because it's coming from a Western nation. Yeah. I'm not saying that they were neutral in disclosing what, but when they put that sentence that says, should we consider blaming the authoritarian regime? Well, wait a minute. We already know how authoritarian regime operates. That system works for them. It's not going to work for us, right? But at the same time, why aren't we willing to look in the mirror and face our own system by deciding, okay, does the system work anymore?
We don't like the answer that we see.
We don't. And that's the bottom line to it. We don't. Because when you look at back history, and this is why history provides the best, greatest lessons we can learn from. Unfortunately, some of us are poor readers of history. We don't know much. We are a country of only 200 years. It's nothing when it comes down to history. When you look at the history of the end of the Roman Empire, how it disintegrated.
That's a fascinating story, not for this format, but
Yeah.
we talk about it frequently, about how long does an empire last? 250 to 275 years before the internal corruption and so on forces it into obliteration.
Yeah.
Well, where do you think the United States is right now?
Well, we are into that phase.
Right.
I think
Now, without some really forward-looking leadership and a real change in leadership, we seem to be headed that direction.
Well, because there is that concept of, and I read it somewhere, I don't remember, but it says democracy in name is not necessarily a democracy in deed.
Oh.
Yeah, because it's the reality, and this is what I don't understand. Those who say, well, how can you say that? You don't like America. You don't love America. You're speaking for this. You're speaking for that. That's nonsense. That's nonsense because they are not willing to hear the truth.
Yeah.
They are not willing. That's the bottom line to it. You're a psychologist by training, Ross. You will know this more than anyone else. Even for me, I have no background in psychology. I understand a little bit, but when somebody is not willing to hear the truth, they'll come up with whatever excuse to justify.
Well, you ready for a concept?
I would love to, Ross.
Elizabeth and I are going to do some real presentations on this.
Mm-hmm.
The concept in psychology is called learned helplessness.
Wow.
And what we have is a government system and an education system and an employment system that inspires helplessness.
Oh my God.
And then you wonder how come people aren't taking more action.
Yeah.
Well, the system is rigged to make people feel and believe that they're helpless.
Exactly.
Anyway, we're going to do a big presentation
That's
on that
great.
and what to do about it.
I look forward to that. And this is why I argue in my classrooms. I'm a faculty, I teach, but I would never go for a full-time tenure professor. I don't want it because that's so corrupted to begin with. That's another concept for another day. But it becomes the question, why am I bringing the teaching part? Just to highlight the idea of if we are to think for a moment, let's say democracy is a test we have to take today. We are ill-equipped to pass it. We're going to fail. That's how I rationalize the scene. And this is why when I saw that report, Ross, I was thinking in terms of, they got a valid point in addressing the issue, but they went about it the wrong way by not pointing exactly what it is, where the issues are. And the issues we have is you got a few elements trying now to control the entire production system, the entire process, limiting. That's why you always hear, reset, the great reset.
The great reset.
Yeah.
What a joke.
Yeah, and also you don't have to own anything and you will be happy. Which is pathetic
and broke.
Yeah, that's pathetic. But the idea of what worrisome about this even more is that those entities are controlling the government.
Clearly.
That is where my big concern. So that concept of government is for the people, by the people, is thrown out of the window. That is where my big concern. So
would you say that's pretty much the takeaway for today?
Exactly. So I will be very, very curious and interested to see how things progresses the next 3-4 years.
Yeah.
With the shift that's taking place geopolitically and how hopefully, especially American audience here, will wake up to the reality. Maybe we ought to start questioning this so-called democracy, if it is working for us or not.
Well, if you can't put food on the table, that gives you a clue.
Well, it looks like that's where things are headed.
Exactly.
So, all right. Let us move into what's that? So, shall we start?
Let's ask some
Yeah.
questions.
So, I'm gonna read some questions, and you can.
We'll do whatever.
We'll do whatever we need to do. All right.
I wanted to have this one first because we are advocating for real democracy. And so Thunder Dragon.
Certainly. All right. Thunder Dragon, thank you for being here. We truly appreciate you. So here's the question. Why is democracy so important? Why does everybody must adopt democracy? You mean adopt democracy, especially Western democracy?
Oh, that's a good question.
It is a good question.
It starts with not everyone has to adopt Western democracy.
That's true.
If your history and culture don't warrant it, or you don't have a precedent for it, it's murderously hard to install that.
Yeah, if a system that operates, let's take China, for example.
Perfect
You know,
example.
their system works for them. You know, what are we trying to impose, which we're going to fail anyway? Or not just China, any other country. You know, they have their own system. They live their own way. That's like you at home. Do you want me to come to your house, Ross, and tell you how to live your life?
Not today.
Yeah. And I don't think so. You will appreciate that. I won't.
No.
Yeah, I respect your opinion, whatever. But the moment you start telling me how to live my life, I'll tell you, Ross, I love you dearly. You're a great friend of mine. We are whatever.
Yeah.
But that's where it ends.
Right.
Yeah. Well, same thing.
And you know, you take a look at China as an example, because we do deep dives into
Yeah.
that very frequently. One of the ways the Chinese people define democracy is freedom from crime, freedom from violent crime. They say that's a big part of democracy.
Yeah.
Well, we don't say that. We say lots of other things, but not that.
Yeah.
And so it's a very different definition, and they like their definition.
Exactly.
We should say, no, that's not valid.
No, not at all.
Unrealistic.
But it also wouldn't work here. And I think that's an important point.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, the Chinese system would not work here.
Mhm.
No, I won't.
No.
I won't. They have their own. We have our own. So, next question. All right, let's see. Avi, BCC. Good to see you, Avi. Question. What's up with Taiwan? I heard a lot of riots and violent stuff happening. Is the government of Taiwan making diplomatic ties with China?
Oh, what a complex one this is.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about it numerous times, and I think the number is 47% of the citizens of Taiwan want instant reunification with the mainland. 10% of the Taiwanese business force is now working in Shanghai or other places in China based on higher salaries and more opportunity. And then we have the breakaway group.
Yeah,
And we see a lot of that is politically based.
exactly.
You're going,
Yeah.
what a mess.
So for this particular question, I am not aware of this, you know, for sure. So one thing that surprised me about President Biden's invitation next month for the countries is that Taiwan is invited. I was like, you know, another provocation for China. This doesn't make any sense. You know, you are saying, the president saying, we recognize one China. And yet you go on around and invite Taiwan as an independent country.
And you hear the Chinese government complain bitterly. How about you come up with one policy? We don't know what to do with you when you talk out of both sides of your mouth, or if you got four sides of your mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. And that one is the double standard of U.S. policy, foreign policy, that has been, this is not new. American double standard when it comes down to foreign policy, it's been for a while. And this is why I am a believer that foreign policy starts at home.
Yeah.
Fix your home first, then tell other countries what they need to do, whatever. And who are you to tell them anyway? Who are we? Who are we to tell countries how to live and what to do?
When we're not so good at it ourselves.
Yeah.
Oh, let's tell everyone else how to do it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Got it.
Beryakov, good to
Hey,
see you, Beryakov. Question. U.S. is intensifying the provocation in Ukraine, matter with Russia, and Taiwan, matter with China. With the hardship that Americans are enduring, isn't this stupid? or just a big distraction? Oh my
How
God.
about both?
How about both, Beryakov? A great question. Great question. I'd be happy to take the first part if you want.
Please do.
Especially for the Russia part, because I wrote a book about Russia and I did detail this kind of. I'm not surprised because I did mention that about a year and a half or 2 years ago. A year ago, I think, when the book came out. And I did mention that the West, I usually use the word always the West, including the US. And I wrote back then that the West is going to intensify its tactics when it comes down to the Black Sea. Why? Because having a front like that, especially now in Ukraine, that justifies the foreign policy, even though as fragmented and ill-conceived as it is, and also justifies the military-industrial complex in the U.S. to keep going. So,
the reputation of the Ukraine is it's one of the most corrupt governments on the planet. And so the United States said, well, let's back these guys.
Yeah.
And then we see money going in, and who gets the money?
Yeah, including some here in the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
But
we're not naming any names, but we know.
There are some here in the U.S. involved in that.
And so this is worse than a distraction.
Exactly.
And when you listen to what Vladimir Putin says about it, he said, you need to take our red line seriously.
Yeah.
And what is it? 90,000 Russian troops are on the border, some number like that.
Well, now that's why you're seeing this propaganda of now the West. And I read certain from different sources. I always wanted to see the headlines, how it goes.
Yeah.
And you know what they all have in common? The word invasion. All of them have in common. I understand anytime you have military action, the term invasion is associated with it. But that is not what the West is saying. Because now they want the masses, all of it, to tie the presence of Russian troops on the border with invading Ukraine. That's what they want. Which, to me personally, that could be just another tactic Russia is using because they are smart at moving certain pieces, whatever. Who's to say? But at the same time, as you suggested, Ross, well, the West is not taking Russia's red line seriously, and the West is gonna pay dearly if they cross those red lines.
Putin is taking it seriously.
Well, look at the test they just did for the hypersonic.
Oh yeah.
Can you imagine that thing nuclear tipped? The same thing apply in Taiwan.
The current statistic, and I just looked at reading this yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
How long would it take if war occurs? How long would it take before American cities started to be evaporated? 30 minutes at most.
Oh, scary.
I thought it was in Europe it's 20.
Oh yeah.
But in the United States it's 30 minutes. Those hypersonic missiles and then the nuclear warheads that Russia has. Wow.
Yeah, they're gonna need to be careful. My fear, just to complete this answer for Beryakov, my fear, Beryakov, and to all of you guys, my fear is that if there is a miscalculation, that is my big concern. If there is a miscalculation, there will be no point of return, because once a bullet is fired, you can't take it back. So even though it was by mistake, the other party is not going to interpret it that way, and that's where my big concern is. All right, let's see. Next question for us. That will be from Denis De Campo. Hope I pronounced it correctly. Thank you for being here. What can you say about Hungary being turned down to join NATO? They joined with Turkish now. Oh, yeah, because what Hungary is going through, because the idea of they are not willing to go with what the European Union is saying, especially when it comes down to immigration. They kind of. I watched one of the interviews that their prime minister, president or prime minister, what's his name? I draw a blank on his name. So anyway, Korban.
Oh, congratulations.
Korban. So I had to dig into my memory. So Korban. And he did challenge that notion of how European Union, that is, try to impose its policies on Hungary. Well, Hungary wants to live the way they want to. This is what we said again earlier.
Yeah.
Who are we to be dictating to countries how to live?
Even other European countries trying to dictate to other European countries
Yeah.
who to let in. You know, there's a backstory with this.
Yeah.
When the wall came down, the Iron Curtain came down, Poland was at the forefront of, we're delighted, we're going to welcome anyone into Poland who wants to come. Oh, did they live to regret that? Oh my God. Criminal elements from all over Eastern Europe came into Poland. And as a matter of fact, the Polish police got consultancies from the Chicago Police Department as to how to deal with all these criminals.
Wow.
Boy, do they not want that again.
Yeah. So it's really different. And as to Turkey, could be very, I don't know. I'm just thinking that Turkey might end up leaving NATO altogether at some point down the road.
That's not I wouldn't be surprising.
Because you and watcher of international affairs and so on, you are seeing the trend how Turkey is moving east. You know, they acquired first the S-400 missile system.
Yeah.
They're gonna soon be acquiring some fighter jets from Russia because the F-35 program, it's not working out good for them. Plus, you know, the Russians are coming out now with the next fifth generation of fighter jets. And guess how much it costs, by the way? I looked at the program about it. They cost between 25 to 30 million. How much F-35 cost? Oh, above 80 to 90 million dollars.
Oh, very much more expensive.
Yeah. So for NATO as a whole, NATO is useless. You know, we say this over and over. NATO, as of today, is useless. So they have to do whatever to create a justification for their existence. But yeah, so we could see a change into that direction. All right, let me see the next question here. Okay, next one, Brian Wang. Good to see you, Brian. Question: Taiwan is invited to the Summit for Democracy in a couple of weeks. How much this will set back U.S.-China relations, if any? Thank you.
Oh, wow.
That's why I like our viewers, Ross. I mean, there are...
This is really a deep question.
Exactly.
And an important question. And
yeah,
it's also really complicated.
It is complicated. So how will it set, if I may answer this one?
Please do.
How it sets, it will set it back even further. But also it highlights to not only China, but to the international community. Europeans might think about it, maybe and maybe not, how double standards U.S. foreign policy is. Here you are, you, President of the United States, saying to China, we recognize one China policy. Then you go around and invite Taiwan? That just doesn't make any sense. Who's going to trust you?
Do you remember the Gulf of Tonkin incident?
Oh, of course.
Would you tell one sentence on what is that?
Well, it's just I'm trying to find the word for it.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find deception, lies. I don't know.
It was the excuse for the United States entering into a war with little Vietnam.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it keeps niggling me. When is the next Gulf of Tonkin incident going to happen? And it's going to involve China.
Yeah.
Well, the United States just keep giving more and more and more opportunities for this kind of misinterpretation or provocation or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Excuse.
Exactly.
To do something terrible.
Yeah. And this is why I remember when I did the breaking news with Elizabeth about AUKUS.
Oh, yeah.
It was one of the things that I remember mentioning is that this is where Aussies, Australian people, not the government, are being lied to because, I mean, common sense, come on. We all know you can't have nuclear submarines and you're not going to arm them. I mean, come on. It's common sense. But the Australian people have been have been lied to, been misled, and even the information is not even shared with them in the sense that their government is putting the country in jeopardy here.
You know, if any American city is 30 minutes away from evaporating, I mean, that's just so shocking to think about that.
And this is, again,
how close is every Australian city to that?
Exactly. And this is where, again, the whole idea of what we're doing is to promote peace. It's because we know what the consequence is going to be. Why not live in peace? Let countries live the way they want to. Yes, make profit, entering trade, but it's kind of, what are you going and creating one problem after another, one tension after another?
When there are real issues that together we might solve.
Yeah.
One of them being world poverty, another being the environment, and it goes on and on and on. All these things that working together, we could make a real difference.
Yeah. And we can start here at home, as I said. And I am not beating the dead horse here. As I said, foreign policy starts home. Let's go fix our own problems first. Then we'll deal with the rest of the world. So here's Boone. Good to see you, Boone. Question: what changed in the democracies that is now so much more focused on name and form of democracy than effectiveness of government? Oh my gosh. Or when did this happen? Thank you, guys. Stay safe. Thank you, Boone. See, that's why I like, and I like Boone. By the way, guys, just for you to know, Boone been with us since the beginning. Yeah, I remember him.
And we've had some real substantive conversations face to face via this format.
Yeah. Because
he's a member.
Because he's one of our members. So, and just to, in brief statement here, as you know, Boone, and to all of you guys, you know about censorship. You understand this. We don't need to be beating the dead horse here. But that's one of the topics, by the way, we're going to do for you guys, just the members on that one. But the whole, go ahead, Russ.
Well, starting in 1975, there was a real trend toward democratization.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw all kinds of world events where military were giving up to civilian governments. About 1989, it changed and started going the opposite direction. And so here we are at critical points of losing democracy all over the world.
Exactly. And the way I see it is the question that's going to be coming. Is democracy effective? Because the efficiency of a government, regardless of what is said, the size of the government could define or impact the effectiveness of the government. I don't buy that argument. What I buy the argument is how effective the policies are, regardless of the size of the government. But of course, in our case, in the United States, after the Great New Deal, the government got big.
Huge.
When it got big, of course, the programs got big, and that's where it becomes, start to impacting the effectiveness of the government to the point of, now we know about the bureaucracy, red tapes, nothing gets done with the government. And if ever the government tells you, well, we will fix that problem,
you can forget it.
Forget about it. So the question for the democracy aspects of it, it's going to be now, and I hope Americans will wake up and start asking the question. Because once they start realize, it start hitting their pockets, their economy, they are working, the few controls most of the resources. That is problematic.
That is, and there are two factors into this. One is transparency, which we don't have.
We don't have.
And the other is without transparency, there's no accountability. So government officials can in and do whatever, and they can hide, and they're not relieved of their duties because no one's really watching.
Exactly. And it will always be somebody who's saying, well, no, you guys don't know what you're talking about because the system. Well, here is my answer to you. If you happen to be that person, is you are not liking what you are hearing because it's the truth. Simple as it is. So the democracy part is going to be questions coming up as to the effectiveness of the system. Will it lead to a comparison to other systems? Maybe, maybe not. Could this mean we need to take a top to bottom review of the entire system?
That's exactly what it means.
That's where I
almost
see
every political campaign you're going to hear, well, we're going to be transparent.
It just,
and what we see is a lot of lip service, and then it doesn't happen.
Yeah. And because, till people take matters into their own hands. And what I'm saying is understanding. I'm not saying any other or advocating for some, something that is not within the limits of the law and so forth.
Oh, absolutely.
Or what I'm referring to here is the idea of becoming informed, becoming educated about the issues, understand where things are and the dynamics of how things work in Washington for them to grasp the reality of what we are faced with.
Right.
Because that's where I see this is moving forward. So, all right, let's see next question. Harry Smith, good to see you, Harry. Question: I just heard China has discovered large deposits of both oil and natural gas across their land and maritime territory. Are these really game-changing quantities or just majorly exaggerated?
I don't know that.
That's
one.
a good question, Harry. I did not hear about this one yet. So
Me either.
yeah, I didn't hear about this. It would be great if you could, if you have an opportunity, just post the link of where the info came from, and I'll be happy to take a look at it. And I have my ways of finding out where the info, if there is. But this also lead me to mention something to you and to all of us here: the idea of why the United States requested from China to give some oil to the U.S. from their reserves. This has to do with it? I doubt it, because
This seems so preposterous. I mean, but we know it's true.
oh yeah. Speaking of oil, did you know the United States has requested from Russia to increase production? It's pathetic. How can you sanction a country and turn around and request assistance? That just does not. It's absurd. It does not make sense.
You know, the way my mind works, I'm going, okay, we're sitting in the Kremlin talking about this as Russians, going,
Yeah.
Could these people be more nuts?
No, yeah,
Oh, boy.
that's exactly so the short answer is we don't know. I don't know.
I've not heard of this.
I am
before.
not aware of it. So, but I found the Russian one because it was weird. I mean, I saw it yesterday. I tweeted on it. Just make sure you guys follow me on Twitter so you can see, and follow Elizabeth as well, because she does post the stuff as well when we talk about the issues like that. But this one about Russia, the moment it came under my radar, I had to tweet on it, but I couldn't help it. I had to put how odd and absurd and pathetic of the administration, U.S., to be asking Russia when you are sanctioning them and asking them for assistance. Just doesn't make any sense.
Okay, this is the last one because we're running out of time. But I want everyone to know that I see all your really good questions. We just don't have time for them, and I'm so sorry.
All right, one more question, and we're done here. Oh, Village, good to see you, Village. Village always put comments, by the way. I always read your comments, Village. All right, here's a question. Mario Draghi was appointed as Italy Prime Minister, as are other EU leaders. Do you see eventual EU election or its version of the Politburo? Wow, that's a deep question. What I see, go ahead, Russ.
No, I'm not familiar with this.
Okay, what I see, well, Draghi, it's an Italian, but they're pushing into some direction. What I see is that the fragmentation within the EU.
Oh, that.
And for one reason and one reason only. Because the EU wanted to have its own foreign policy independent from the United States. Which means what? There is disagreement within EU as to those who truly want to embark on that path.
Yeah.
And those who said, no, we can't live without the United States. That's where the issue is for the EU. So how this is going to move, it depends how Germany is going to react. It depends how France, because anytime you think of the EU, who do you think of? France
Germany.
and Germany. So,
well, with the new government in Germany, we have to wait and see how that's going to roll out.
Yeah. Mario also has to be dealing now with the demonstrations in his country regarding the restrictions that they put in it, and Italians have nothing to do with it. So most governments is going to get a pushback. And this is why, just to wrap it up and go back to what we started about democracy, this is where you're going to be seeing. The only thing that surprised me personally is you would expect to see that here in the US, but rather we saw it in Europe first. So who's to say, maybe a month from now, we'll start to see some in the US. So, well,
we'd like to thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please go for it.
Indeed. So your assistance is very important to us, guys. So we truly subscribe if you have not done so. And to our members, we're going to see you next week on a presentation. And for you guys, We're gonna be recording some key, very interesting videos next week. We're gonna be releasing those, and also we are working on some guests. It's the holidays, but we are in touch. Some of them agree they're gonna come on our show. So we're gonna bring a variety of guests. I know some of you might not like whatever, but that's not what we are all about. You guys know this by now, because we want you to have both sides of the argument.
Exactly. If you don't know both sides or all three sides or more, how can you make an informed decision about your life?
Exactly, and that's what we are all about. Because I mean, we understand, but that's how it is. So we have some guests in line. We don't want to disclose the names because some of them are very, very, very important. That you mentioned them by name.
Yes,
so
we're honoring your. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Russ.
We're honoring your requests.
Exactly, and to those, there are some who ask if we can bring Einar Tengen. We will. He will be here. So we want to wish you a good day, good evening, good afternoon, whatever part of the world you are in, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Till then, stay informed.